Well, good morning, everybody. Before we get started, it's kind of a big day in the Snodgrass household today. My son, who's my youngest of two, turns 12 today, so he's already up and having a blast. And Mom made some awesome muffins for him. He loves those in the morning, and it's a Friday, and he's looking forward to a weekend full of soccer and just seeing family. So, big day for us, and looking forward to a good one. So anyway, just a little personal news about me. Anyway, today, here's what we've got. I'm going to tell you about some stats. We're going to talk about Drought Monitor. I want to walk you through some of the changes in the near-term forecast, including some of the stuff going on in the tropics. I think it's going to influence the pattern toward the end of this month. Then at the very end of this, we do have some new long-range data we have to talk about. The CPC released all of their products for September and then the rest of fall. We'll even look at some of the new long-range stuff for winter. So that's what I want to cover here on Friday. Map I've been talking over, of course, is just the month-to-date temperature ranks. We'll do precip in just a few seconds here. And of course, the main story that we've seen throughout this time period has been this much cooler than average air that just drove itself through the midsection of the country. Well, there's been a lot of heat in the southwest. There's been a lot of heat in the northwest at times. Very hot throughout parts of Texas, even into the mid-south as of late down here toward the lower Mississippi River Valley. Florida's had an extremely hot month of August so far as well. And we do know that this pattern is going to change. It still probably has about 8, 9, 10 more days looking something like this, not quite as cool as it has been, but still the same kind of pattern. But there are a few things that are shifting this all around. So we're going to get to those in a few seconds. But it's been this dryness that's been throughout parts of the Mid-South, the lower Mississippi River Valley, all of the surrounding states down here around this big river. And what I've been concerned about is not a whole lot of evidence is in place right now to kind of build in wetter conditions into this area until we get a tropical system. And we're still another 10 days away before we start to see major activities showing up in the Atlantic or the Gulf or the Caribbean, any of those basins before we get some more tropical activity going. So these precip ranks do show some other very important holes that are starting to show up on the drought monitor. For example, this has been an area that's been struggling a lot. It goes a bit farther into Nebraska than what I drew here, but you can see here throughout this early part of this month, and remember last month as well, we've had some rain try to work its way in here, but it's missed. Now, Kansas has had multiple shots this past week, which has been fantastic, even though, according to the drought monitor, we're still struggling in this area. And the rains that just came through yesterday into Illinois and that are in Indiana this morning are helping to offset some of this recent dryness. But again, my eye is just drawn to this large area here in the pocket that's still in parts of Ohio, West Virginia, that's been so exceptionally dry. And then throughout the West, while it is still technically the dry season, where only the monsoonal showers coming around and storms tend to give precipitation, we are still watching quite a bit of wildfires in the West, and we're going to talk about those more in just a few seconds here. But there's no doubt that Debbie's heavy rainfall has made this the wettest start to an August for a lot up the east coast of the United States. So let's go have a look at the new drought monitor. I was a bit surprised with this. I thought we'd see more of an improvement in this part of West Virginia and Virginia. More of Virginia's been taken off the drought monitor, but I thought there would be more just because of how wet Debbie was. But that just tells you the depth of the dry conditions that were there earlier. We've started to see more spotty drought show up in this area, although if you are in the Mid-South, if you're in this section of the lower Mississippi River Valley, the drought that has come on at the start of this month, really the finish of July and the start of this month, doesn't feel like we should just be in this D0 to D1 category, given how hot and dry it's been. And back into the plains, this is interesting. Kansas, despite better rains lately, still has a long-standing subsurface soil moisture issue, and we need to take another look at that. But in terms of change just in the last week, these are the areas where you saw your class improvements down here in these colors, and this would be where there was degradation in these colors. So again, see these pockets of drought showing up down here, just really critical. I want to do one other thing with this really quickly here. I just want to stretch this out. I mean, we've technically been in summer, 10, almost 12 weeks. So we just look at the warm season and where the drought has changed during that time frame. This is what I've got. I always find these maps quite instructive on looking at these seasonal fluctuations. There's one other thing I want to do here. If you are unaware of how to use this website, go to just Google Drought Monitor and you'll find it. And then for those of us in ag, come over here to Ag and Drought. When you click on this link, you'll be taken to some options here on stuff to look at. I like to look at row crops, tend to focus most on them, and you can see each of the each of our main crops here in their area in drought. So for example, a lot of cotton acres, 22% in drought, barley, 35%, corn and soybeans at 5%. So I just find it to be useful to look at this to gain perspective on how that drought monitor is shifting around. Now let's look at some new precipitation. You'll notice that these new maps, I've been working hard on this. I've almost got this done. These new maps are not yet on the web, but they're going to be there very soon. This is your last 14 days of observed precipitation. And just take note that there are sections of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, where we've had nothing. And you can see that pocket in through here where it's been exceptionally dry as well. And there's places throughout the country that, despite the wetter conditions that surround it, we've not been able to get the right kind of moisture into those areas to kind of pluck away at that drought monitor and get rid of some of those those increasing numbers showing degradation and drought. So if we get over to the last 24 hours, though, this was through 6 a.m., there's our low that was curling up here, and the rain that came through Wisconsin, parts of Iowa, Illinois. I mean, this put a cap on a crop in Illinois, just to be clear here. But to see it getting over into Indiana is fantastic. This has been an area that I've been concerned about. This has been drier, and while not hot, but dry, we need to get more rain into this region. I'll be excited to head to Indiana next week a few times to see some of the crop conditions there. Now, some of these storms were putting down some severe weather yesterday. In the storm reports for yesterday, we had 141, most of them wind reports. We had some rough storms in the Northeast, several individual storm clusters, including some absolutely photogenic storms down here in southern Missouri, southwestern Missouri that looked pretty good into Oklahoma. But this is just a quick look at the reports from yesterday. Okay, so that brings me to a radar animation. Let's watch this. This goes from last night through early this morning. Rough sleeping here, just given the thunder. I live right in that area, but look at this rain coming through Indiana, some of it getting over to Ohio, some of it on the river. And just this morning, I was watching this storm very carefully to try to push some of this moisture right over that really dry spot. But as you can see, as the sun rises early in the morning, you have your stable layer near the surface that begins to just modify. It's not a good time to maintain thunderstorm development, and that's why this one's certainly falling apart here as we go forward. Now, if you come back to the northwest, there's this upper level low spinning, and you can see some of the scattered showers and storms that are running around that yesterday. Watch this reset one more time here. There it is, bringing some rain into some areas that are struggling with wildfire issues. But as we look at the big areas that we need to see correction on, there's a large region from southern Alberta and Saskatchewan through this part of North Dakota, Montana, straight through South Dakota, Nebraska, back into Kansas, curling its way around to the panhandles, part of the lower Mississippi Basin, the Mid-South, the Ohio River Valley. This is where we still have those subsurface soil moisture deficits that need to be corrected as we try to finish this growing season. But the issue here is that the correction needs to happen very, very soon, because once we get, honestly, into September, it's good to get another rain on beans, but after that we want everything to kind of dry down for this particular area of the country. And we're going to look at some of those stats historically in just a few moments. So on satellite, yesterday, of course, there is our Nesto powerful tropical system. It's up to Cat 2, almost Cat 3. But as you watch the sun setting, here's the storms popping here, some down here in the very lower Mississippi Valley. Wildfire smoke supplied both by Canada and by some of the wildfires in the west coming over parts of Montana into the northern plains. But again, another look at that wildfire smoke in the northwest here. Very low cloud cover mixing in with that smoke, but some pretty large fires still burn in the western United States right now. And I believe we're over or approaching 5.5 million acres so far this year for the United States on burned acres. Well, this morning we just kind of play through, get the visible imagery back up. We have a low that's leaving the northeast, some smoke around the backside of it, but there's our Nesto, pretty powerful system. If we take a closer look at it, you're going to see there was an eye last night that opened up, but some deeper convection kind of filled over the top of it with its kind of cirrus shield and some very healthy convection. The storm is no longer symmetric. It's got some drier air that's kind of getting pulled in or entrained on this side. So it's stronger on its right-hand side, which is expected, but it is on its way toward Bermuda. And it looks as though that the right-hand side of this hurricane, which packs as we talked about yesterday, the biggest punch, is going to hit Bermuda. So this is going to come in at probably a Category 2 strength hurricane. It's currently got wind speed sustained at 100 miles an hour. It might do some slight strengthening on that right-hand side before it gets there. But there's a lot of evidence that this is going to be a fish storm staying pretty far out here to open ocean. If you take a look at it, this is the kind of the ensemble density plot. In other words, if you take all the tracks and look at the higher probability of where it's going to go, you can see that this storm is eventually going to get pulled up into the much deeper low that's here in the North Atlantic. I'll show you again in a few moments. But it might just clip some parts here, the Canadian Maritimes, But other than that, this one's going to stay out to open ocean and largely just be a system that disrupts travel and shipping across the North Pacific as it goes forward. Very large waves with this, so we'll have to be very careful with that part of the industry going across the North Atlantic. But as you know, there's a couple of other systems we're watching, and one of them has already started to pull itself up toward the Aleutian Islands, but we're going to watch another tropical system here that's near Japan today. And as you can see in its forecast, called Ampiel, it is expected to also get absorbed into that Aleutian Island or Bering Sea low pressure system. And what we're thinking about with this is that if that does occur, that's going to deepen this trough over the next 15 days. And if we deepen that trough, what we end up getting is a pattern that likes to do something like this. And that means this ridge that's in the midsection of the country gets to open a bit more. And that means we're going to spread some more heat, not now, not in the near term, but soon, farther to the east as we approach, the end of August. And it's also going to be a bit of a drier signal for a big swath of the midsection of the country. But this low off the west coast is pesky. It's going to be there for a long time as we get kind of stacked up here over the North Pacific. And until we get more tropical systems going later in the month, much later in the month, like after the 25th, we might be in this pattern for a little while. So given that this is the 15-day average of where we're going, let's have a look at just the North American view here of the forecast. Now, I was looking at this, of course, before I recorded and forgot to restart it, but do you see what I'm talking about? Here we are 210 hours out. That's on the 24th, and there's still troughs of low pressure along the west coast of the United States and Canada. And because of that amplitude, this ridge is opening. And you know what I'm going to be talking about. It's going to be, are we getting any little waves to come over the ridge to make for storms? And is anything coming up out of the Gulf? Where's the Bermuda High to pump in the moisture? Those are all late summer questions we ask. So let's go back and watch it again. So here we are, Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. There's the ridge opening up right on the panhandles there. But look at this flow. This is very meridional or north-south, highly amplified. In other words, lots of big waves. And that ridge is going to open up, which is why we've got excessive heat watches, warnings, and advisories that I think will spread back out of the lower Mississippi River Valley toward the Red River Valley as we go forward. So this is just through Sunday, getting into Monday and Tuesday. Remember, we're watching that little guy right there for the chance for some storms on Tuesday. Been talking about it all week. We then play this forward, though. And by next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the models are no longer sending little shortwaves over the periphery of that ridge, which means now we're getting into a kind of a true northwest flow here without shortwaves signaling that this is going to give us a drier time period with the temperature starting to warm up. But again, not for another week or so in terms of really warming up and staying above average. But as we play out there longer, the pattern, here we are, that's where we started. I still continue to see troughs of low pressure living along the west coast. And by the time we get out there to the 26th, this ridge has opened itself up into the ice states. And beyond that, Tuesday the 27th, Wednesday the 28th, and so on, we're going to get some warmer conditions, I think, to finish this month as the jet stream makes a full retreat into into Canada, staying pretty far to the north and getting pretty weak, which is common for this time of year. So that's why we start this discussion about where are the tropical systems coming through to influence the pattern and what do they look like. So all hazards weather map this morning about 6 a.m. We have air quality issues in the west. You can see that we've got the risk of flooding here. We've also got a large area across the south with excessive heat warnings and heat advisories. And this is going to be an important issue just to watch how this heat expands with time, but it's going to take some time to get there. So let's go and have a look at the Storm Prediction Center maps for the day. This one's changed quite a bit. This is now the 16th forecast for severe convection, and we now see a big section of Kansas and Oklahoma stretching into the southern parts of Missouri and Arkansas. We're going to keep an eye on today, plus the storms that continue to press east have a marginal risk. Then this is Saturday getting into Sunday. And I want to show it to you on the high-res NAM, which I think this morning had a decent initialization. Some of the storm positions are a little bit off as of 6 a.m., but good enough I think we can use it. So what you're going to watch in this is one low curl itself up this afternoon. Scattered severe storms in this area. I know it's not showing up in the model, but SPC's on top of this, keeping an eye out. And as this low curls over the Great Lakes, you're going to now see the next one showing up here in the Pacific Northwest. So we'll watch out for the risk of some of this wetter these wetter conditions, these storms rolling through parts of the Mid-South, desperately needed in this area as this low leaves this weekend. Pretty cloudy and inclement throughout the Great Lakes states. But some of the reason for the flood watch on this side of the Cascades is as we get out there through Saturday into Sunday, look at that low just off the coast. See, I'm talking about this one. And look at the moisture streaming up right along the I-5 corridor toward the Puget Sound. I mean, that's going to be producing some wet conditions, early wet conditions. I mean, it's late August, and we're talking about heavy rains coming out of this. And that's where our pattern's going. Now, the model on Saturday is trying to toss out some storms in this area, and I'm just going to tell you, it may just be an artifact of the initialization. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that in the midsection of the country. Certainly, the SPC was keeping an eye on something there for Sunday, so just want to keep you aware of that. But bigger picture, this is where this pattern's going to land us. So there's that amplitude. See this? Wow. So we've got deeper troughs here and here. This is the tropical system Ernesto, but that's the ridge we're going to watch. And without any shortwaves coming over it, except for the one on Tuesday, this is overall going to be a drier pattern everywhere that you have flow coming in like this, and everywhere to the south of it like that. Okay? So without those shortwaves, we can't get that. So I want to show you the models. First, this is just a 14-day forecast from this morning's European ensemble looking at the the precipitation anomaly. So that little shortwave I talked about on Tuesday, that's what's given us this. Okay, well, mostly this. This could be this Sunday. But look at the dryness we're expecting Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa. Look at the dryness we're going to expect in Texas. This corridor shows up wet because of that trough of low pressure, and the flow comes around like that. That's an exit region of a trough, whereas this is where all the convergence is in the pattern. The inclement weather in the Northeast is partly right now going through this weekend, but we do see wetter conditions there too. So if we walk through the individual models, take a look at how much the week 1 forecast from the WPC changed here. Remember, I was showing quite a bit more rainfall in this area, but it is going to be stormy and wet here, and this is going on right now through the weekend. And we're waiting on the next tropical system down farther to the south. The national blend of models, 7-day out to 10. The artificial intelligence, 7 to 10. Major change in this model here. Now, some of that rain just came through. That's why it also went drier. But we had more out of this when you looked out there at that 10-day forecast with the previous run. But look at how wet the AI is from Northern California all along the west coast here. Very wet into Alberta, Saskatchewan, but a very large section of the country going to be dry, too close to the ridge or under it, and without the good northwest flow, drier into this area, also drier into the southeast, limited chances for those pop-up scattered storms we typically get this time of year. Let's go from there to the European. Now watch this. The European is still suggesting, that's the 7-day, that out there day 10, we're still lighting this up. See that? There's 7-day, 10-day, 7 and 10. And the GFS 7 to 10 also has more storms kind of showing up in the pattern. But overall, I think that the dynamical models, the individual runs, are not going to be as informative as looking at the probabilities. So let's spend a moment here. This is the new 1-inch forecast, for the chance of 1 inch, I should say, for the next 10 days. So we do have this system leaving through this area now, plus there's the pesky upper level low that's going to be here for a while. But now we've limited these chances for a broad area of the country. So what I want to do is, now that you've seen the wetter side of this, let's go look at the drier side. I probably got a new model running. Yep, just got it in. Let's step back and take you out to 10 days. Now do you see this expanding? And other than the storms now, today, okay, this is all going to be drier going forward, but much wetter here. Big changes, I think, in this forecast. How about we step this up to the chance of getting less than ½ an inch? Now you can see the influence of that large ridge. Boy, that is really impressive where it is setting itself up to give us some drier conditions going forward. Now, if anything changes with that ridge, and that's why I spent time at the beginning of this telling you about that typhoon near Japan. If anything shifts the position or squishes that ridge farther to the south or moves it west or east, this doesn't validate. This won't come in. We'll have to watch for other potential systems rolling around the ridge. But as it stands today, with what I know on early Friday morning, this all makes sense over the next 10 days. I do want to flip this over and show you the GFS ensemble. We do have almost the whole 6Z run-in, so we'll just look at that one. This is the probability of staying under a ½ inch. And here's the really dry areas, the chance of staying under 1/10 of an inch. So notice the lower resolution of the model, for example. If we look at the wetter side of this, pretty consistent, I think, overall with what the European is saying. So good information here, I think, out of these two models. Now, I do want to show you one important thing about the time period we're about to slide into. So we have to start to adjust our thinking on what hot is and what dry is, all right? Because in July, these are your precipitation normals. Just take a moment, pause the video if you want. In fact, let me blow this up so you can see it. You can see the color bar down there in the bottom. Now, from July to August, look at the differences. So July is a very wet month, especially if you're east of about the 100th meridian. But as you get into August, we see very wet conditions south, but that's largely due to tropical season getting going. But August is a drier month in a big section of the main ag belt of the United States in the central part. Then as you go into September, this all starts to wane. And by October, that's when we get into a good dry season, although this is biased by tropical systems, but this is the beginning of the wet season for the north. So this progression of dryness I kind of mentioned here is actually what we expect to see this time of year, making that recent rainfall that just came through for some folks absolutely critical. But areas that have not gotten rain, they're going to be needing to count on some of these later season rains. Maybe not in October, but certainly before we get there into September, which we're going to talk about in a few moments. So week 2, just put this in context, you can see this drier area in through here, and it would be climatologically accurate to be saying that we will start to see more of this, just to start to see the jet stream losing its momentum late in the season. That's what fall is. Fall is a transition season. You say, well, why is fall, start to get cooler later, but starts off drier? It's primarily because we've lost all of our, jet stream momentum at this point. I'll show you why in a second. What makes it tricky is the fact that we do expect to have tropical systems in fall because that's when the ocean temperatures hit their peak. And I'm just going to make this case one more time. After the 24th, 25th, watch a few different areas in through here. I know you don't see anything on the map yet, but I want to be watching those 3 corridors about 10 days from now for starting to light up with more tropical systems, because we're not going to be getting much, moisture out of the jet stream from this. I mean, let me just take you back and I'll show you how about we go here. Let's just go to the European ensemble. We'll do this again in a second. Here we go. Let's talk temperatures first. We mentioned the heat that's down here in the lower Mississippi Basin, the heat that's been permanent, it feels like, down here in parts of Texas and Oklahoma into the southwest. But as we go from Friday into Saturday, there into Sunday, we do have some cooler air driving its way through here into Monday, Tuesday. Notice the lack of excessive heat in the west, broad area of cooler weather, big section of the country here. All the heat's back into Texas. It'd be nice to get this cool down in this region given how dry it's been. There's Wednesday and next Thursday, so that takes you out about a week. Day 5 through 10, notice the difference. As we just plant a low here and a here, and what we end up getting out of this pattern is, remember, whoops, that's not how it goes. It's going up around like this and then down. There we go. That's what we're doing. This ridge is opening up, bringing in warmer than average conditions. Now remember, warmer than average in late August is different than warmer than average in July. I've been saying that all week. But this is the new day 10 through 15. And now, if we think about that, the European model has also picked up on a similar signal. That goes out day 10 through 15. And it's a reminder that this is what the jet stream's up to by the 27th of August. So maybe we'll just use this map to make the point I was fumbling over a moment ago. Why do we lose jet stream winds in late summer into early fall? The jet stream winds rely on strong surface temperature contrast. And they rely also on the cold being aloft and the warmth being near the surface. That's what helps drive that contrast through the depth of the atmosphere. And it's just gone at that point. It just leaves. And this is what gives us the transition into fall, where we have this rather uniform temperature distribution that just slowly cools near the surface over a span of about 3 months. The upper atmosphere stays quite warm. That's why fall is often stable. Okay, all of that is just to tell you that this jet stream pattern is actually pushing pretty far to the north, leaving a lot of very weak flow across the lower 48. And that's why we see the support for the warmer conditions trying to spread out of the southern plains in toward the Great Lakes states. And we're going to see a bit more activity in this region because of the way the flow is coming around this broader trough that's in the northwest, which is what's going to keep it cool. All right, so that was all just to say I think this is what's going on in the pattern. It's part of a seasonal transition, and it's also just part of the fact that the flow has dipped itself into a western North American trough. All right, here's what I wanted to get you to. The CPC updated several things yesterday, and this is their new 1-month outlook for September. And honestly, there's a lot about this that looks very similar to the European model, which I've been sharing with you all week. So we see wetter conditions in the Northwest, wetter along the Gulf Coast and up the East Coast. And I know all of us are struggling to see when a tropical system comes in September to hit this area. We're basically a month away from the peak of the hurricane season. So there's still about 75 more days where we could expect to have tropical activity. What is interesting about this is that their September forecast still maintains that there could be equal chances of warm versus cold here, and their strongest warm signals in the Great Basin, Four Corner States area. Given where we're going in the near term, I would have expected them to keep this a bit warmer than it is, but that's okay. That's just a model run. It's their internal model and how they interpret it. But they also updated their seasonal drought outlook. And what you can see here, now this goes all the way through November 30th, where they've got drought developing. A lot of this is happening right now. A lot of this is ongoing drought issues. But the Nebraska one, that's an important one to see here as we go forward, given that we've had some timely rains coming through parts of Nebraska, not necessarily northern Nebraska, but through parts of it as of late. Look at where they're expecting drought improvement. This could be an early indication that La Nina could be more of a factor helping to dip troughs into the Northwest going forward. That's just one of the symptoms of a developing La Nina in fall. I want to go from here and show you their new 3-month outlook. That is their updated forecast for September, October, and November. And if it does come in mild and drier, stretching into this area, this would be a good fall. I mean, a very good fall. That would be extending the fall out for longer harvests, and the soil temperatures maintaining themselves such that we can do fall application. I would like this if these two maps verified. The problem is that I don't want to see drought develop anymore in these areas, even in fall, because it'll last all winter. From here, let's go and have a click on the 3-month outlook. And what this will take us to is their actual model runs. And let's go out a little bit farther into October, November, December. This is on the precip side of it. Because of the way the CPC continues to more aggressively forecast La Nina's influence, they're wetter than average in the Northwest, very dry down in Texas. They've been very consistent with that. This is the November, December, January forecast. You'll see them showing up wetter Great Lakes, wetter parts of the Mid-South, wetter Northwest, very dry across the southern tier. This is a typical La Nina setup where we steal the momentum from the subtropical jet stream across this area. We'll then go out here and look at the December, January, February. And this is also almost textbook La Nina look to a winter forecast, December, January, February. And the temperature for that particular time, oops, I always click on the wrong one, I'm sorry. The temperature for that time, they're actually calling for more intrusions of colder air across the northern tier of the U.S. and Canadian prairie, with the warmest conditions staying farther to the south. Now, there's big questions as to whether or not we'll start off winter cool and finish warm. Are we going to flip-flop that? So much of that will depend on the next probably 90 days, maybe not 90, maybe 60 days of ocean temperature evolution. Because the big thing that we have to watch is the heat in the North Pacific. There's two big epicenters of it, right? We've been watching those all summer. How much are they going to influence the potential outcomes of this La Nina? That's something I don't fully know yet. But I'll keep looking at it, and I'll let you know what I know when I know it. So let's just do one last thing here. I want to take you to South America. Now, we got to be very careful with these maps. These maps, which show drought severity over the last 3 months, which, remember, this is the dry season in Brazil. It's not supposed to rain much. But what these maps are showing is that compared to data going back to 1981, this was one of the driest dry seasons on record, right? But we have to be careful here because this is like saying, oh, it's dry in the desert. Okay, it's a dry season. They don't expect much. But in terms of evaporating what moisture was left in the soil, we've got a bit of an issue here, I think. Now, all of this can be undone in the span of a week if the monsoon comes in on time. But I do believe that this dryness as of late is what's influencing this forecast all the way through the end of September in terms of the precipitation outlook. Notice that it's very dry in the same places that the maps were showing that it was dry, and wet where it's showing things having been wet. I think the map here is more showing us a persistence over what's been happening versus actually picking up on the start of the monsoon. So we need to take this carefully to try to understand when and where the monsoon is going to show up and what it might do soon. But it's still several weeks away from getting going. So we'll wait on that and just keep you up to speed on what's going on in South America. Okay, that's it. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks.